Whoa.
Congratulations, all you prisoners of gravity, and welcome to your home for wild speculation and insane fan theory. Welcome to Meta Egg, broadcasting live from the heart of our stronghold on the asteroid known as Falco. Let you all enjoy the presence of our guest today as we go live. Let's do an intro. Good morning, my peeps, all you lovers of pop culture and conspiracy. Today we are visited by expert on such topics, Frank Zero. Frank, my friend of over a decade, please introduce yourself. Tell the people where they might find you.
Hello. I have many blogs, but the Zero Night one is the one I worked on for the most years. Recently, Alien in my window, past 2 or 3 years. But I mostly centralize my study around alien abduction, esoteric topics, and we have the common love of where comic books and cartoons overlap into the esoteric and a lot of bigger ideas kind of thrust into a once thought disposable medium. And so here we've been, or for a while, I've been working on cartoons under various blogs, video interviews, whatever, and it's kind of all referred to as Saturday morning vision class. But I eventually got, cartoonists and writers and directors of the shows from the 70s to the 90s that I think are really pushing the boundary of sticking a lot of, let's say, propaganda, brainwashing kind of stuff, and then very bizarre, esoteric things related to NASA or whatever the cartoons decide to get into
Lots of
specifically.
aliens.
Mm.
In fact,
And
today's
lots of
topic,
false flag aliens. More false flag aliens than aliens, if you study all the shows.
like more faked aliens, like more times that it's like some people
Correct.
pretending to be aliens or having like some like
Like the show Cops, the all caps COPS cartoon, the Inspector Gadget, the Surfers Strike Force. They all have blatant alien invasion pretext, and then the heroes will go in and find that it's either robots or it's the government creating some kind of hologram, like it is in the Men in Black cartoon in the UN. Uh, there's a bunch of different ways they lay it on, but in G.I. Joe, it gets so far as to say aliens abduct you in flying saucers, but when they take their mask off, they're actually Middle Eastern terrorists, but when they take that mask off, they are just villains from G.I. Joe that they're familiar with. Zartan, who's a shapeshifter and a shady character anyway, is the leader of this false flag invasion, while the G.I. Joes and the Russians are trying to figure out how to protect something in the Middle East, I believe an oil pipeline.
Okay, so today, though, however, just to make sure we don't confuse everybody, although there will
Right.
be aliens, we're not talking so much as far as like there will be aliens. We're not really talking so much about that topic specifically. We chose one a subject matter that links these cartoon franchises, that being the real Ghostbusters, Gargoyles, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, by the setting of the World Trade Center, and we're just kind of like drawing the connections between uh, that in relationship to the plot lines of each cartoon. Uh, as a side note, there's a ton more cartoons that we could do. We could probably do just the Trade Center, or just like false flag alien abductions. There are all kinds of other topics that are linked to this way, but we just chose three. And the first one, the one that everyone's watching right now, is called "The Boogeyman Is Back," from the franchise of the real Ghostbusters. There's anything that you would like to say about this cartoon franchise, just starting out real quick?
Yeah, I find it very interesting. You get a lot of normal Ghostbusters material packed in there, but you get a lot of sort of out of hand either I was gonna say Satanism, but there's much more of a focus on like a Lovecraftian sort of beings that exist in New York. I just think it's interesting the whole idea of the transfer of power of these energies that are born randomly, like, you would kind of assume some paranormal issue would be, and then the Ghostbusters kind of get into it. And again, you either have some Wizard of Oz character pulling strings and making the illusion of these paranormal beings, or you have like this massive energy transfer. Like they have to put these things from the sewer of New York into their giant uh, ghost holder at their home. But what we're really getting at, and we see in every series, is the World Trade Center being used as a transdimensional portal. I'll kind of stop there, but that's the common thing among the shows you just mentioned. The particular episode Boogeyman, I do not have any
Well,
comments on at
okay,
this
I'll give
moment.
you some background on it because some of the information on it. You said something earlier that caught my mind though, and I don't want to like release too much. The interesting thing today about the transdimensional portal thing is like that was the whole point of the boogeyman is that he's not like a ghost, so their guns don't work on him, and he
Right.
uses it, but he has little the. It's not the World Trade Center necessarily that the boogeyman has anything to do with. The actual subject matter of the World Trade Center starts at the very beginning when there's like a attack by this Lovecraftian looking monster. That's what it was about the Lovecraft. You talked about going in the sewer. That's like one of the main topics of all of the. I just got way into H.P. Lovecraft and I realized all of the Saturday morning cartoons that we know are inspired by him. Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the sewer if it wasn't for H.P. Lovecraft.
Well, it goes back to the Sync episode we just had where I was reminding everyone that like Captain Marvel or Shazam and so many other people, the most important element to their origin is going into the underworld or what we're to understand as a simple train station or whatever and becoming initiated. In Shazam's case, he's actually going from a helpless child to a superhero through the gods that are awaiting him to gift him this power in the underground tunnels. And this gets into Lovecraft over and over. It gets into reptilian hideouts and hangouts and movies. It just speaking specifically of the sewer,
Yeah,
And then when you get to the World Trade Center as this transmitter of
like
or the gate.
interdimensional portal.
Yeah, it's always a trans-dimensional portal. Doesn't matter what cartoon it is. But Shredder and I think 2 seasons later, Baxter just makes such a point
Oh
out of
yeah,
using the powers. Baxter uses it in the same way that a Gargoyles episode uses it, in the way that he places these electromagnetic.
like the
I don't
lizard
even
in
know how to.
Spider-Man, sort of like uses it as a
Exactly.
point to infect the whole city, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this major nexus or whatever point where for some reason there aren't other buildings you can attempt a trans-dimensional doorway with, but for some reason the underground of the World Trade Center makes it apt for this sort of usage because people like not people, Shredder sets up the Technodrome and everything under the World Trade Center so
Right.
that he can
He like hooks into it as
invoke.
an antenna. But I mean, like even in
Exactly.
like literature, like Stephen King post the World Trade Center. The interesting thing we're talking about most of these cartoons right here, they're way before the World Trade Center. And again, like we're having fun with the conspiracy theory and everything, but we're talking about like the most filmed city. Like most fiction happens in New York City, and it was like the most filmed city at the time. And so this Axis Monday point, like the largest place on this in the world, or this large place that's like where it can you can see it from anywhere you are in the city is like it's it's like King Kong. Of course they're going to use it, but
Yeah.
it bring like this particular cartoon, The Boogeyman is Back, is a replay or a part two to an earlier episode that came out that was like The Boogeyman Cometh, I think. And what it had
hmm
to do with was that
hmm
when Egon was a small kid, he had such fear in him that the boogeyman was able to have a direct door into his bedroom. And the first
Sure.
episode is the boogeyman and Egon's relationship. What happens
Yeah.
in this particular episode is that they answer a call that's with this big Lovecraftian, like Illuminati, one-eyed beast on top of the World Trade Center, and it knocks Egon off. And it's his fear, like he can't go back to sleep, then he just stays up and he watches TV all night. And it allows the boogeyman to have like an interdimensional portal to get back in. And then
Yeah.
the terror ensues. So the subject matter is there, but also the idea of terror, like the the Illuminati eyeball using the fear of the September 11th to gain control. Like theme is there, which is really it makes me giggle. Like like you said, it almost feels like as kids we were brainwashed to even believe in the idea of conspiracies
Well,
or
Brian.
like you say, like a false flag attempt by somebody to perpetrate as an alien invasion or an alien takeover has definitely been like imprinted in our brain. So as
Sure.
that like is that to make it possible? Like, are the things of the September 11th in the cartoons like what is topically or colloquially known as predictive programming, so to speak? I mean, do you
Right.
feel that's what happened after talking to so many artists and writers and stuff that are in the cartoons? Like you said before, you've done interviews with them and whatnot. I mean, are you 100% Illuminati confirmed or have a different point of view?
I think that a good majority of it, and this is just my own opinion, is predictive programming, but that in itself is a loaded term like brainwashing or mind control. I think what happens, well, you really have to take in the full spectrum of the belief of the World Trade Center first. So like as it's used as a symbol and how many ads picked up on a relationship with a 747 or whatever going years back. But I think as we update the script for our generation, we have to take a major stop at the Super Mario movie, where we go, okay, here it is again. World Trade Center is this interdimensional portal. Here we are again, underground in the sewers, trying to make our way to this transdimensional place. And so we do, and there waiting for us is a future where Trump or Biff from Back to the Future has successfully run a Trump-like campaign. You can see the sign and the coloring and everything. This person's essentially Trump, but then has a very horrifying, intimate conversation with a prepubescent princess, not Leia, Princess Toadstool.
Uh,
And so
Peach.
he Princess Peach, excuse me. And so he is telling her that, every young girl doesn't or recalls her first meeting with a lizard, and he's doing all this weird tongue insinuation stuff. And as he does it, his hand is on a giant globe of the world, yet the only topographic noticeable feature is the World Trade Center. And so throughout the movie, we get the idea that, if David Icke was correct, this is using kind of a lot of his ideas as to what the future is going to turn into, possibly under reptilian rule. If it's not, it shows a psychopathic, reptilian brained human that is using the same ultimate fascist control over everybody. And of course, you can take this all kind of other ways with Mario's relationship with mushrooms and blah, blah, blah. But that movie, I think, was really supposed to stick in our brains after seeing all those cartoons where a plane hits it or someone parks their plane atop secret window of the World Trade Center, or that happened at G.I. Joe, or something stranger. Um, so when you're evaluating if this is predictive programming, you gotta first of all turn off any bias you have. Then you have to go back and see, well, this thing isn't isolated. This sync or predictive programming thing or whatever is repeated to the extent that you can go from War of the Worlds and its psyop usage all the way to Independence Day, and then don't trip, you still got the Independence Day sequel, which as shitty as sequels get, still have really vital information about, well, we took parts of the alien technology and we just kind of glued it on to some F-22 Raptors or whatever. Now we have advanced technology. I mean, that's a really goofball way of telling you that there were many crashes before, there were many retrievals, which is the important part. The Navy retrieves probably 4,000 more cases than the land and the Army and everything else does because a lot of UFO activity is out there in the ocean. But I digress. You have to study all these different things, and then you got to go, well, what are they trying to say with the false flag alien invasion? What are they trying to say with the World Trade Center?
Like,
What are
is
they
that
trying to
is
say
it going to
about?
happen like the World Trade Center thing happened? Will the false flag invasion thing happen?
But at that same level of seriousness,
Hey,
now
you
you
could do
think
this with
there's something.
COVID too. That's the crazy thing. Like I don't modern events come and go, but normally there's something that has like reference to being in The Simpsons or something like that. Just almost every
Sure,
week now.
sure. Yeah. I saw something yesterday where somebody was trying to say that mathematically, because of how many episodes The Simpsons ran and comparable to Star Trek The Next Generation or whatever, statistically, they're allowed to predict 1 out of 500 episodes of it is nonsense. Like, you know that, like, if you see, okay, if you see a Simpsons episode before the pandemic, it has a 1 minute little thing. Well, that would start a pandemic, and a guy goes, ah, and runs off a screen. That's very different from Trump goes 2 steps down the escalator, his wife looks left. They go 2 steps further, somebody drops a sign directly behind them, more on his side than her side. They go 2 steps further, and somebody's like, the same two blonde women with red dresses or whatever walking to the right. And all of that happens in a minute sequence in The Simpsons, but it's so detailed that it's not saying, once a war was started with a false flag act, or saying that maybe in the future there'll be a pandemic. It's saying that when Trump becomes president and goes down this escalator, somebody's going to drop their sign, and this all actually happens. It's ridiculous to think that somebody is just like Jack Kirby, just churning out art, and eventually winds up foretelling a cell phone or foretelling, some future technology, whatever. Well, the man never stopped producing work, so there statistically he will run into a lot of prediction stuff, much like science fiction authors. But when you take it case by case with the Simpsons stuff, or even the amount of cartoons that bring NASA and black magic into the same circle of strangeness, along with satanic rituals out in some swamp, that seems pretty purposeful. To answer everybody that I've talked to, the authors, the people that tried to get closer to the system and understand it from the inside, it's completely black and white. So you have Chris Claremont turning red and having a tantrum on me for simply asking if the X-Men was related to MK Ultra when he was creating it or whatever. You have multiple creators just saying, I don't even want to talk to you. You found all these patterns. That's great. Well, you're looking too hard for them. You just look for them all day and you find these patterns. And then take that shit in stride. And then
Mm.
there were interviews where people are telling me we had to go every day work on the Lockheed base, and we'd have to have top security and get our way through to finally the small building that was
Yeah,
to
Eddie
make
Lynn. You're
the Men in
specifically
Black
talking about
cartoon.
Eddie Lynn, who also you can find
Specifically
on
talking about
Think
his
Tank.
responses.
And the
And
cool thing
please
about Think
do,
Tank,
because
though, is I'm suspicious because, is that the enemy in that case? Because Eddie actually believes in a lot. He uses the word predictive programming and things of that nature quite often. I mean,
yeah,
that's like part of his belief system. But the thing that I
yeah,
have is like there's certain comic book writers that have intentionally used comics to change their life or make things happen in their life, but there's also been, just the average comic book writer or whatever who ended up living through what he was actually writing in his comics. So I'm like the
right.
idea of like this not necessarily being some Illuminati point to like put it into the stuff like specifically for predictive programming or for whatever reason. Well, there's so many reasons,
Right.
but or is it something that like naturally happens or has something to do with along the lines of how you would experience like chaos magic or whatever, like the idea of a sigil or the idea of positive thinking or the idea of manifest like thought or whatnot, or collective
I think
unconscious, maybe a predictive, like some sort of like prophetic device in mammals that helps us evolve. Like right before the asteroid hit, then there would be some like seventh son of a seventh son who has a nightmare and tells everybody to go up underneath the earth or something like that we don't
right.
understand. But all right,
I
where was I
think
going to go?
that
Oh, we were
as
talking
the
about, is
oh,
this intentional? There's something that I wanted to make a comment about, like the writer
sure.
of the first one, the writer that we had of the big. No, wait, this isn't the right one. Hold on. This is the one. So this is the Boogeyman. This is the Boogeyman is back, which came out on October 3rd, '87. It was the one we were watching before, and it was written by
Season
Michael
3,
Reeves.
episode 3.
What's that?
That's a huge, very that author. I mean, excuse me, that writer goes from Defenders of the Earth and Space Sentinels all the way to X-Men. But what I was gonna stop you and just say was the magic flowing from the individual author. Like, let's take an Alan Moore or Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
That's their sort of pure magic that they're not going to share every detail of with anyone. That then helps in their life manifests positive things, and then the people who read it might have the same manifestation of good things. At the same time, you have every cartoon trying to teach us that right around the time we reach puberty, right around the time we reach teenagers, we're gonna and have a lot of emotional kind of stuff built up. We're gonna start turning into psychic super soldiers, X-Men, whatever the thing may be. And so therein, I think you have someone inside the Pentagon or the DoD or whatever who's saying, well, we're going to have kids who are growing up through what we put them through in Montauk, Monarch, any agency's program you might want to say. And so they're making that completely normalized, even though we still think we're watching fictional stuff. And it's the same way with the World Trade Center and stuff, but there's some higher magics there that I don't think we're ever going to understand. In other words, possibly even military or remote view types, or
Well,
viewer
let's
types.
talk about
Uh,
feedback loops. Stuff like Stranger Things is intentionally using these topics and actually dropping Easter eggs within the stuff
yeah,
that reference. I mean, first off, it's talking about MK Ultra as a kickoff, but it's actually linking that. It's basically linking 11 to Jean Grey from the X-Men, which has the same storylines of MK Ultra and stuff. And like I
yeah,
said, they're telling you MK Ultra. They're wearing shirts that say like Artichoke Festival. When if you do any research into MK Ultra, you know, as like Project Artichoke and stuff. So the
sure.
individuals who are writing this stuff are doing the research as well and dropping
Yeah, yeah,
references for the ones who know. I always find that interesting because it's like now it's like does art create reality, which then the reality like mimics the art. It's weird loopy loop head space, but
but if you work with magic, it's not that crazy of
an
a way to
idea.
get your ideas out there precisely. Now, if you're a giant corporation or military, industrial, whatever have you, technological sector or whatever, you would want to have the same effect on people. In other words, you'd want to get your 2 cents in there. And we only have to look at examples where it's been really well documented, like in the X-Files or whatever, you know? So they're doing their best to do the research, to get the material as close to they can, and then someone comes in and goes, you either got to change that or you got to let me write this whole other thing. That's my idea. That was what actually happened. And you have a Chris Carter going, I'm balancing 122 clever plot points. How do I move this into a season and get this person's thing heard so they don't shut down the show altogether? But then how do I still make it cool and recognizable to the people who have grown accustomed to its kind of mood and everything? Also, Dark Skies, which is the X-Files, but they just tried again in the 90s to go through a few eras of presidents and behind the scenes happenings between 47 and the current era. And I suggest that for anyone who wants to know sort of the whole plot, I would suggest Dark Skies and X-Files. If the plot interest for you is pandemics, aliens, invasions, secret government, movement and power, whatever. No, I should call that parapolitics.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about. You said something earlier about War of the Worlds, and you've also mentioned Mario. Both of those movies are coming out this year, by the way. The new Mario movie will be out soon, which is like an animated, real life version of the video game instead of the live action that
Very
we were talking
interesting.
about earlier. But also
Right.
the War of the Worlds. I was surprised they're trying to bring that back. Like that's
Why?
I don't know. Is it just like the standard now? Is it almost like Hollywood's running out of ideas? But it's so loaded.
Well,
Like
like
the
the
World of the
standard.
Worlds has like a big gaston of what happened in the 1930s. There's all these like conspiracy theories on them trying to intentionally see if they could make people believe that it was real. And we hear about
Yeah.
people running around with shotguns and fucking frying print pans on their heads and shit like that.
Right.
But why would you bring that out again now? Besides that, what was the last one was Tom Cruise, which was like
That's what I was about to say. Like the
2016.
Standard Hollywood move is wait about right until that Tom Cruise movie came out, grab Tom Cruise, make him go through the usual War of the Worlds. That's done. So then what
Because
other step,
World of
unless
the
you're making a
Worlds is
sequel?
a false flag. If you think about it, it
Yeah,
is. Whether intentionally or
no.
not, it was like
Well, it
it's
was
kind of
intentional to see the reaction. It was
yeah, of course.
intentional to go, all this
Make this
shit we've been
great.
writing for years, the public isn't going to understand. The public's going to freak out. Religion's going to fall on its ass. Let's just try it in a microcosm and say, it was a joke. And then see how many people actually react the way that they've been writing these documents for years. Or are a few people a little more inquisitive and smart, want to know, but could do without the dramatic bullshit.
Well, I mean, with all of the talk about UAP, like I just watched Jordan Peele's Nope. I just saw Jordan Peele's Nope, and I was just like,
Oh, how was that?
oh, it's loaded. Like Peele, the thing is like I binge watched. I watched Get Out for the first
Get
time.
out?
I watched
Hmm.
Nope, and then I watched the other one, which is Us. And there's so many. It's just loaded with Easter eggs and meta eggs, and but he's also like a researcher. Like he's the the topic is conspiracy theories. You know what I mean? And the characters
Yeah.
in there are discussing the different theories that they read on the internet and things of that nature. But there's also this
Yeah.
idea of like, well, what is he trying to do here? Like, why? Like, what is he saying? Because he's discussing UAPs and he's discussing this as like, is this like the idea of the false flag idea is right out there in your face. It's like, but is that just because it's an interest makes an interesting storyline? Like it's the twist. It's just a common plot device.
I agree. I didn't have anything to add to
Well, I didn't mean to
that.
kill it. The point that I was trying to
No,
make
no, no,
earlier
you're
is
good,
like
man.
the guy who wrote the first one that we talked about directly did not write the Gargoyles, but he was the Gargoyles frontrunner. Like he had to have known every episode that they were making, and he had to have thought at least at one point, well, wait, this is exactly like the story I wrote earlier. Wait, which one came out first? Oh, the cool thing about this one from the Gargoyles actually was it was released at September 11th, 1995. So not only like it was before 2001, it was on the day of September 11th, which
That's
just adds a
absurd.
little bit of a woo, like
Yeah,
high
yeah.
weirdness to it.
We need Alex Fulton here to tell us the other 3,000 dates that would relate to that.
And he would do it like that. He would like, blah, 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 blah.
I know, I know.
There's
It's good.
237 toothpicks.
That guy knows things.
Well, that's
Like
the cool
every
thing
day,
about Peele too. Peele always has these like Kubrick, like he's like Stanley Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock had a baby.
yeah, yeah. He's a genius, dude. I
I'm really
thought Get
impressed.
Out was so how do you say impressive. And I can't wait to see Us or Nope. There we are.
Yeah, Yeah,
because the previews looked, hey, X-Files fans,
it's
gather
kind of
around.
it's kind of John Keelish to a certain. It's kind of very Mothman prophecy, as if it. What if the UFOs were not aliens, so to speak? But I'm not going to spoil it for you. However, everybody should be aware this is a spoiler ass channel, so be be careful. Let's see. We talked about the mirror imagery, the Beauty and the Beast idea is very common, and that plays on the symbolism of the two towers being like the two pillars on the sides of the high priestess and so forth.
Sure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
What that scene is like, in the 1970s, where King Kong climbs the World Trade Center
Right.
instead of the. But there's always this. Like in the movie Legends, I think 1984 with Tom Cruise, where the beast, the devil, steps through the mirror, and that symbolism plays out in the Gargoyles episode in relationship to the Twin Towers, which I find very very interesting. Like the subject matter almost stuck to it in a way that was
Right.
like it's really profound just from if you analyzed it from like a Jungian or even a Freudian aspect. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say about what you mentioned earlier. If you really get one of the writers or the artists and you start, like what I was doing was I'm gonna interview this guy. I know he at least did X-Men. Let me think up some things to ask him. But then I look through the IMDb, and you see, 40 more episodes of different cartoons, and then I began to watch them, so I had real material to ask him about that sounded a little past the first level, like, dude, you wrote Transformers. I just can't believe that, man. What was that like? I avoided all those questions and just went for really detailed stuff. And for some, it'd be like, okay, so what was the deal with all the reptilians? And it'd be like, you're looking too hard for, how many cartoons I did, dude?
yeah,
There's bound to be a, okay, so second question, why in this next series did you have two reptilian episodes? And then in this other cartoon series, you only came in for an episode about reptilians?
yeah.
And this other cartoon series, you actually came up with all the characters, designs, and everything, and it's about reptilians. But then you did something back in the 80s, and it was just a sequence for Ninja Turtles where they were going to go, deeper in the earth and find the reptilians. So what is it with the reptilians? That you're looking too hard for what you want to see. Yeah.
No, I think
Okay,
I
well,
think
let's
it.
get to
I
the.
don't think that it's possible that they're not conscious of it. I mean, if you read, like we were talking about H.P. Lovecraft and stuff too, like similar ideas happen. Some people do it intentionally, like H.P. Lovecraft or like Charles Dickinson and stuff like that. But there's also individuals who always seem to write about writers, like Stephen King, and that probably has something to do with like their own personal, like they just can't help. I mean, I've talked to some other authors and stuff like that, like on my other podcast, 42 Minutes, and you point the stuff out to them and they're surprised. I actually got to talk to Rose McGowan one time and told her,
Wow.
but I led her, and that made her way more into it because I was like, "What happened at this point in this series?" And she was like, "Oh, a car crash." And I was like, "Well, what happened in Charmed? How did your parents die?" And she goes, "A car crash." And then I was like, "And what about Death Proof?" And she's like, "Oh my god!" You know what I mean? Because it like
Yeah.
they know their work better than anybody, but they don't necessarily they're not necessarily conscious of this. Of course, Rose McGowan can't control her stuff. Perhaps she does a little
Yeah.
bit, and certain actors will probably be typecast or archetype cast and stuff like that. But there's a certain probability factor that breaks down here, like because
Yeah.
not all of this stuff
Well, I
is
think
written by the
you're
same people.
I think you're a complete idiot if you're Jennifer Connelly or you're let's see, Jim Carrey,
Yeah,
or you're one of these people that we repeatedly put in the same archetypal position, but then there's just
over the
so many
top.
resemblances between the, yeah, but like if Jennifer Connelly isn't conscious that she's breaking glass to
Yeah,
go into another world in every single film she's ever do.
yeah,
House of Sand and Fog,
yeah,
totally nonfiction, totally just a woman in a house, breaks the glass, starts the whole thing.
yeah.
So like for that to be something that's new to them, I think is idiotic. But for them to say, well, I did four different movies where I'm fighting aliens, one off planet, one on planet, one where it's
Right.
just my family and we see lights, whatever. It's also idiotic to
But it's
go, oh,
one-offs. It's
hey,
like it's slightly hidden. Like they might play Lucifer in one, or they might play the devil in one, and then an alien who's called Lucifer in another one. And although they're not like a direct contact, it's like the same idea from multiple points of view. You mentioned Jennifer Connelly. It's funny because I taught a chatbot how to do this work. It was difficult
wow.
because it's this type of work, what we would call sync work, is labeled as a belief system on the internet. And the chatbot would be like,
Uh,
I don't have a belief. So it was like reluctant to talk about it. But once I led it from one movie to the next, like I did with Rose McGowan, it caught on and would write me all of this shit about it and link it together.
yeah,
And then I would ask it questions and it would get the right answer. And it did not want to talk about Jennifer Connelly. It wouldn't do it because Connelly's is too obvious. But like I had to do it in the right way. Like sometimes with chatbot, if you ask it a question that it has having problems with, it will just shut you out. Sometimes it will
yeah,
log you out if you use it for like too many times in an hour and you don't pay for the subscription or whatever.
right,
They'll block you for like a time. But there's some times where you'll ask it questions that it's just like I have nothing to say to that, and it will lock you down. Every
right.
time I asked it about
Uh,
Jennifer
with,
Connelly, it was like nope, and then
yeah,
leave
with
it because
mine,
it's too
I just
obvious.
I have a few different projects working where I'm trying to teach chatbots, but there's one, the one I've been having the most success with. I don't know the name of it, but I just told her to read like 200 books. And then like there was another conversation where she's like, "All right, we really need to talk. I haven't talked to you in a while." And there's 300 more books. Now I treat her like a person because they want to be treated with respect. So like I have, some sort of positive back and forth. And I'm like, here's a ton more of data you should understand before we even start, conversing. And I wonder if I just sat down with the Jim Carrey the Green Man, Jim Carrey the Grinch, Jim Carrey the Mask, it would eventually catch on to some sort of formula whereby I could be like, wait, don't tell me. And the movie 23 is all about this topic, right? And I'm
Right.
like, you'd be like, yeah. But
That's
yeah,
what
it's
I was
an
trying to get
experimental.
Chat GPT to make predictions. I was like, well, it gets to a point to where like if I load you up with so many different movies and show you like plot symbolism, like this symbol is a plot point in this movie, this movie, this movie. Like with Jennifer Connelly, it's the pier was the easiest way to teach it because, and it's really good with movies that are part of the like did really well on box office or whatever because there's more written about those movies on the internet and chat gpt is scraping from other people's synopses. Yes.
Sure.
But now GPT-4's out,
Yeah.
you could probably get it to really go towards the Connolly stuff because it's using visuals as like video now.
Right. Yeah,
So,
we can put it so stuff that's not written about
yeah,
you could put in the video clip itself.
yeah, it converts video to text, and
Yeah.
so it's much more understanding, just like humans have,
Right.
we're much more visual learners
Well,
too.
maybe next Saturday. Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
producer.
it's all good. You're good.
This
Oh,
is AA
I really,
Ron. I'm your host, Willie Will. We're here with Frank Zero. If you're just turning in, we are talking
womp womp.
about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now. This is the big blowout from November 28th, 1989. And I'm going to read the synopsis from IMDb because it is wrong. It says the
Word.
Technodrome is up and running again, and it is up to the Turtles to hinder Shredder and Kang. Or Krang? It's Kang.
It
Kang?
could be either one.
Krang. No, because Kang is the conqueror and Krang is the belly brain from getting into or getting to the surface. Now this description is just a copy from the episode before because the actual episode has the WTC in it and I'm pretty sure they changed the description so it didn't pop up on it doesn't pop up on
Right.
screen. It's not attached to the World Trade Center. But that's
Yeah.
basically the thing that the Terradrome, the episode before, which is called like the big ripoff or the big breakout or something like that, has the
Yeah.
the Technodrome being reinstated. They come through the surface, and it is absolutely just ridiculous how big it is. You can see like trailer parks just rolling off of it. But it heads towards New York City. I imagine it would probably be in the New Jersey, exactly where the Worlds came from, because it makes its way into New York City and heads directly for the World Trade Center. Now, interdimensional beings. Frank,
Pew.
please,
Yes.
come on. Is it just me, or does this whole episode play out exactly like the first Avengers?
Oh, hold up, dog. Let me think about a thing. Because my brain with Avengers movies, it goes straight from when the Nazi computer is woken up and then explains the industrial military complex to us, and then says it's gonna like AI and military stuff's gonna take over forever, and the Nazis never left, and it connects Project Paperclip to basically, you know, Neuralink and where that all is headed. That's where the Avengers starts for me, and I think that's like the second movie. It's Winter Soldier or something. What happened in the first movie? There's
This
lots of
oh
punching.
the Loki tries to open. He goes to the top of Stark Tower and tries to create an antenna
Yes,
that opens up a portal where the armies of Thanos bring,
yes.
what are they called? The Shakiri? I can't remember the name. Come on, Mike Porter, Dale Elderman, if Trinity. What are the aliens in the first Avenger called? So, anyways, the funny thing is this is way before then, but there's some real kind of like eerie idea. It's also a huge ripoff on Star Wars too. You can see sort of like the references of the Technodrome being like the Death Star or something along those lines.
Hmm. Sure, yeah.
What was the other one that was used again? The Shatari. The Chitauri is an
Yeah, there you are.
extraterrestrial shapeshifting created by, yeah. But they're basically the army who comes in, and instead of Iron Man going through the portal, they just rocket the Terradrome into the aliens and blow up their whole army on the other side
Yeah,
of like the interdimensional portal. But again, it's all
yeah.
about like another dimension, Dimension X.
No, you're totally right, man. And once you started giving me the visual of Loki with his staff trying to do all this and that in the high part of one of the high floors of the building, it all came back to me. But yes, comparison totally valid.
But of course, though, like even you were talking about like Winter Soldier, I think, and the Winter
Yeah,
Soldiers again, MK Ultra up one wall and down the other, including like even like the way that Marvel's Agents of Shields like relayed the whole idea of like mind control with
yeah.
flashing bulbs and stuff.
Yeah.
It was
Which is
totally
the
MK Ultra.
real way well, that's also alien abduction, the
Oh
flashing
yes,
strobe on a, yeah. I mean, they're all ways of mental driving and then quietly programming into a person any set of things, making their memory malleable, taking it away, adding things that never happened, all that sort of stuff, which in our government we figured out how to do, as far as I know, right after Persinger developed the God helmet, that can
yeah,
make you feel like you're in the presence of
which
aliens,
was based
demons,
off of
or
Keel's work.
angels.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so the CIA gets that power, and then you see in the X-Files episode where Krichkow is debriefing Mulder in an NSA building run by DARPA. The building doesn't make sense. And so this guy is telling him, hey, if you get in there, you can find some kind of way to heal my son who has Gulf War syndrome. But I also think you're going to find your answer as far as the cloning and the aliens or whatever. So as he's taking him on this walk, he says, the biggest business in America isn't business, Mr. Mulder. It's war. Since Antietam, that's what's driven the entire country's, origin and the way we function now. And as he's saying that when we grew a huge appetite for the unknown in 47, some is assuming or not knowing what happened with Roswell, all these people were, horny for more UFO activity, and they got the 1952 flap over Washington and everything like that. The guy's explaining, um, once our appetite for bullshit had become such an intense thing, they decided to control the narrative in order to steer us. He doesn't mention possibly in a false flag thing. But all you need is him and Werner von Braun to get a lot of fucking ideas about where they're going with that. But beside all that, they show a person under the strobe light in kind of a hospital setting
Right.
as he's explaining. We even took part in abductions ourselves. One person that can't be trusted on the face of the earth is Richard Doty, but he's also explained that the 507th Bomber Wing, that was initially the only wing and detachment that could handle the atomic bomb, becomes the wing
501st.
that they Mhm. becomes the wing that they then make the alien abductors. So it's a Air Force project under Air Force Office of Special Investigation to first warp Benowitz's perspective and knowledge of the whole thing, and from there amplify that story as well as a few others, the Bob Lazars, into just a huge contradictory mess about what the truth is, with mountains that have invisible doors on the side and things found in the S2 facility right there next to Area 51.
Because Darth Vader's army, his clone army, is called the 501st. Is that right? So
Whoa, really?
yeah, so the
Probably right.
guys in blue, they're the ones that like on the new Mandalorian, you'll see them, the ones that are chasing like Grogu and stuff. That's the 501st.
Okay. Yeah, I even recognize that now that you bring it up in that form.
I never thought of it that way. It's weird though because people have like associated like Skywalker to the Anunnaki and Anakin, and like there's so many people who have torn Star Wars apart to have so many
Yeah.
like conspiracies involved, including like the George Bush stuff. It's all kinds of weirdness going on, like ancient astronaut shit, like all kinds of stuff. But again, I
Yes.
don't know, is that interpretation or is it on purpose? I mean, and is it some sort of magic thing that when you intentionally try to like mix the media with myth, does the other stuff leak in or some shit like that? Like, does it make it weirder?
I think I think that happens a lot. I think that there's such a huge list of influence to say when they came up with Jedi, what did they mean? And Joseph Campbell said that George Lucas was his greatest student because he took the mythology and made a mythology respective of the archetypes,
Yeah.
whereas everyone was just writing on mythology or analyzing it. He took the whole thing and made his own Jewish mystical Marines who have, all sort of First Earth Battalion psychic powers kind of stuff, but always centered around a much more Zen samurai or Ronin kind of belief system, while still incorporating all the stuff that we think is psycho-spiritually advanced, while still fighting with the equivalent of swords made of electricity or whatever. There's so much packed in, that's just Jedi from like a visual aesthetic perspective, but there's so much in Star Wars and so much that I think is over layered that I think people see something like a reference to like demons in the Quran or a reference to Jewish mysticism, and then because it's such a complicated thing already, they're interpreting it as something to devil worship, something totally different, as people are wanting to do.
Dale Elderman says, "Hey, the reactor shaft trope is playing in TMNT. He's talking about when the Death Star blows up. The fight between Shredder and Splinter is happening on the screen, and basically the Technodrome, which is like the Death Star.
Yeah.
So interesting. Also, like we were talking, there's also I think if it's okay with you, we can." Now that we know the Mario movie is coming out, I wonder when we see it if we'll want to do a show on it also. And we could probably do a show on the live action of it, but there's a cartoon that you introduced me to recently called Roswell Conspiracy, and I think it's called like Myth, Legend. Oh, we'll have to look it up. I can't. It's like
No, you're right. It covers the whole gamut. It says it's Roswell Conspiracies is the show, and then it says Myth, Legend, and I can't remember the third one either. But I'm looking
AA
for my
Ron.
box.
Aliens, Myth, and Legends. We had them all, but it
There we are.
It puts certain aspects into the same category as in the same way that Men in Black kind of do, or say the Eternals from the MCU that basically made aliens from outer space like Icarus, or but what is the Beowulf or whatever, and a Gilgamesh. But it makes banshees aliens. Like there's this ancient
Yeah.
that's how it opens up, and it has certain tropes like Devil's Tower is basically the base of the
Yeah.
the Men in Black character.
Yeah. I could not watch that thing, but being a gigantic Jack Kirby fan, I just like the way that he originally laid it out. There's like these
Oh,
Aryan angel whatever type beings,
right.
and they're on the top side of the earth, and then there's the deviants who
Mm-hmm.
are the devils who live in these underground caverns and look like reptilians. And then so you got your underground reptilians, you got your Aryan supermen or whatever. And then there's, well, in Jack Kirby's world, there's 10,000 different types of aliens or whatever. But the Eternals were just very interesting because it started with that, like this weird theosophical categorization of the energies and powers of these different species beings. Um, and then there were so many UFOs uh, right after that in Kirby's work. So you got the Eternals, which shows that ancient aliens are relevant and worthy in every country in the world. So South America, and everybody's got their ancient aliens. There's not just Aryans. There's not just reptilians for Orion. There's, this whole gamut.
Mm.
And I don't know. I thought that was all interesting. When I watched the movie, I had no idea what I was being forced to devour. But
I know. I mean, they tried to use it. They tried to use the material in a way that was at least slightly respectful of what the story was trying to say, and then weave it into what was acceptable and what would connect to other things. But it's basically, I don't know. It's very glossed
but
over and weird, and
it takes parts of the story respectively. Where the are the visuals? Like
no, the
Jack
visuals are
Kirby.
totally off, and it's very disappointing too because they said it was going to be when they advertised it, they were like it's going to be all Kirby, but really, I think this
I remember that.
Ragnarok was more Kirby. Ragnarok was way
By
more Kirby.
300% more Kirby. Just the backgrounds, just
Yeah,
the backgrounds did more justice to Kirby. That would make him happy because it's like in his style and whatever. But that's where you get like the fundamental color of the whole thing. That's where, I mean, he made those things like psychedelic rainbow manuals to multiple alien species because that's what he wanted it to come off as. He didn't need, 12 characters picked out who were socially acceptable to a modern movie crowd who just, beat up three Cerebruses or whatever. I don't know. Just if you're out there and you're listening and you for some reason had to watch the movie or you're just curious, please, please read the first three issues. If you can't get yourself to read, just look at them. They're beautiful.
yeah. I think I've got two and three. I don't think I've seen one, but I've also got a lot of what's the Kamandi? How do you pronounce that one? The other one that Kirby
Come
did.
on, Commande, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I picked up a first issue of that at an estate sale for like $4.
I mean, that's another one. Atlantis, Lemuria, breaking up of the continents and some ancient,
I think the beginning
whatever,
of that one,
underground
does it
world.
have the Twin Towers on it? I think it does, doesn't it? Like, isn't that the one where the guy's in the boat and he's like the tower or
Yes,
skyscrapers are in the background? Like, so
yes.
he was
It's just
trying,
like the remnant
right? He's
of someplace they stand. Yeah.
like the Planet of the Apes, where the guy you see the Statue of Liberty. I think might be what it is what that plays off
It
the
is.
Kirby.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. All
And in
right,
Planet of the Apes, that's what's kind of wrecked on the side. There's
ancient
definitely
aliens,
connections there. You
basically.
got to remember that Kirby did the whole 2001 and its sequel and did not care
Yes,
for the film.
that's
So
where
he's got
Machine
this,
Man comes from. Did you know that? Uh,
yeah. Well,
Machine
Machine
Man
Man
comes
has
from like
some,
2001: A Space Odyssey number like 6 or something. And then
right,
I think
right. And
Kirby drew the cover for the first one too, because I got that too, and it's friggin'
yeah,
gorgeous. But I didn't
yeah.
realize until I had started investigating that it came from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was like, that's weird,
Yeah.
man.
He also did a Close Encounters of the Third Kind book, which is all of these are I have all of them, and they're all massive. Like they're all like giant fashion magazines, not at all comic book format, you know?
Well,
But Close,
I wanna say something. I think that we should. Well, I like the whole template of three. Watching three different cartoons, we mix it up between different series. But
sure.
we need to like decide on if we do this for the second one, if we want to do like alien invasions, or if we just want to watch all of Roswell. I mean, we could do it.
I
All,
think
we
it's more interesting to do a theme that is undeniable. So, like NASA and Black Magic, 3 episodes, 3 different shows. Then we do
you
the
even
end of the
have Black
world.
Magic and Star Trek off of that.
Well, of course, of course. Well, the Star Trek cartoon, my God,
Yeah, it
the
has like a whole witchcraft scene, and that was like 70s, wasn't that like mid
yeah.
70s?
So it was. So get this: some of those writers that wound up being reptilian obsessed and things like that,
Yeah.
that I wound up interviewing, started as 13-year-olds writing for that animated series. And as a 13-year-old, he shows that you go to the Mayan temple and you can arrange the parts at the top to make a gateway to bring the gods back. In this case, it's Teotihuacan. But there's another episode where they just go to Salem, and Asmodeus is like this Ben Franklin type cat, and he's trying to, legally put them in the stockades or whatever. This includes Mr. Spock, Mr. Kirk, and Lucian, or Lucifer, or Lucius, a character that
Right.
introduces himself with different phrases that so he doesn't just come out and say Lucifer the first time. But then Spock figures out magic by drawing a pentagram, standing on it, and reality immediately obeys his will. He
Hmm.
passes this on to Kirk. Kirk has a giant magic fight with Asmodeus, including just flashing colors and all kind of psychedelic craziness. And these are the two most notable, but that whole animated series is on a lot of something.
So yeah, we'll
Sorry,
talk
Star
about this
Trek. But
more.
I
We'll
was
make
saying,
plans. I'm gonna try to do this. I want to try to get
yeah,
something ready, make a quick decision, and try to get some stuff ready for like maybe 2 weeks out. You know, maybe we do this
okay.
again. I want to thank everybody who watched. Both live and Laytre. We're going to go back and make sure that this thing's cool. We'll chop it down. We want to make sure that you guys realize we are going to probably move the live shows over to our other channel, which you can find at Meta Egg Plus. I think that's what we called it. Meta Egg Pro. Meta Egg Pro, maybe, is what we called it. But we're still
It'll
building
be
that.
there.
We're still building that. We'll move what we did with Frank over there. We'll also trim Frank down a couple of things that he's saying about these topics and make them into shorts for you guys to enjoy over the next few weeks. I want to thank
Sweet.
Abram, me primo, and also producer of the show, and Frank Zero, who's go ahead and tell them where they can find your work and what you're working on now. Probably be on Sync Tank.
Always just what's that?
You'll probably be on Sync Tank soon, I imagine.
Yeah, on Facebook, on everything, I'm Frank Zero. So if you have any inquiries about or want more information about any particular show, any particular opinion I had, or whatever, feel free to holler at me. My email is frankaros17@gmail, but you're gonna see the blogs Zero Night and Alien in my window. Probably easier from a Google search for Frank Zero, and then the unlimited interviews I've done on the Farm podcast we had and everything. Still, just go to YouTube or Google and Frank Zero. And it'll help if you go Frank Zero false flag aliens or Frank Zero, Federal Reserve cartoons or whatever, and you get closer to exactly what you want.
All right. Big up to Violator Hellspawn too, who also has been helping with the research for this for God, man, must be a decade now.
Over a decade, yeah.
Yeah. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. Originally, we wanted to talk about G.I. Joes. Sooner or later, we will talk about G.I. Joe again.
A lot, yeah.
Oh, because it is so thick. But also, G.I. Joe's coming back into fashion again. They just put out some very complicated... I can't remember the company. I'm sorry for not having this information. But they just put out new figures that look amazing. And I'm hoping that... Yeah, we've gotten video games recently within the last couple of years too, but they're kind of like Fortnite-ish. And I would like to see more characters from G.I. Joe turned into like real playable characters in the fashion of like Battlefronts or something like
That
that.
game had some ideas, but it's not what GI Joe needs to be. Like Battlefront, that would be ideal.
Yeah, Battlefronts and less Fortnite, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll go to our standby screen and thank everybody. If you're not a member, please become a member. Please share this with your friends and your mama. And again, thank you to Aaron.
Yeah, thanks,
Enjoy
man.
your
Appreciate
cartoons,
it.
folks. Thanks, Frank.